Hi there, I'm Dave Butler.
I'm Stephan Taeger.
Welcome to Revival, the Good News Brand podcast. We're so happy that you're here. We hope at the end of this little happy Tuesday, by the way. It's when the episodes drop. Yeah. The day of double blessings. Really, that's a real fact. Ask Stephan, he knows. Is it true?
I Googled it, so I think it's true.
Oh my gosh. He is a professor of all religion and philosophy, and he knows I'm right. He just doesn't want to elevate my status on the show. We hope by the end of this, you feel like a thrill for living a life of faith. That's what we talk about, the good news, right? There's enough bad news in the world, so we do the good news. We use the conference talks from General Conference, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and we pick 3 headlines from it to our good news headlines. Sometimes Stephan picks an entire paragraph. I also prepared a paragraph today, but I felt permitted because you always pick a paragraph instead of a headline. We usually have and by we, I mean me, I usually will present a fake sponsor for every single episode. This one's a real one, though, because it's the Good News brand.
Oh, okay.
And
all right.
They really pay for the podcast. So no one else does, but they... And by they, I mean me. It's my company. So I just wanted to say our Christmas shop is open. You're listening to this in November, which is Christmas time. So go check that out for just the meaningful gifts that you want to give in your life, including, FYI, our Advent. It's this big tear pad that goes on the wall. Have you gotten yours yet, by the way? I can talk about this off camera, but it's being mailed to you.
Oh, that's
Or I was supposed to bring it. I can't remember. But anyways, they sell out. So if you want to get one of those, go snag that. In particular, our new Women in the Scriptures line of jewelry, so much awesome stuff. So that was actually a real life sponsorship. It's the only one all semester long. Today, our talk is it's Elder Gong. P.S. If you want to get a free PDF of what do you call this when there's an extra wide margin version of the General Conference talks, that you can get on the goodnewsbrandco.com. I have that right in front of me. That's what made me think of it. But did I say who it was?
Elder Gong, yeah.
Yeah, Elder Gong.
Yeah.
And our schedule. That's what reminded me of it. And I skipped the reminder of the order that we go in these talks. Elder Gong's talk on Saturday evening, this is great because I think this is the least watched session of conference. So this is great that we're like covering this, you know? This is a 2-for-1. You feel the good news. And also you get to like remember, oh yeah, that was good. And you can go back and listen if you want. Okay, you ready for your number 3, right? We go 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
One's the most important.
Can I ask
Don't cheat off my paper to look at what I picked.
Can I ask you an unrelated question first?
Yeah.
So yesterday was Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
How was it?
It's good. I just handed out candy and we watched a movie at 30-second intervals.
Oh, yeah.
It's a bad idea to watch a movie when you're handing out candy because you have to pause it. And this is one you've already seen a million times, right? It's fun.
Okay.
I like it.
Did you dress up?
I like it. No, not for the handing out of candy. I did for our spooky dinner, but did you dress up? There's no way you did.
No, I've thought about it, and I haven't done it in years. That's really lame of me.
I like dressing up.
Okay.
But no, not for that, not for the candy handout. But
okay, you ready?
All right, you're number 3.
Number 3, here we go. Elder Gong. Growing evidence highlights this striking fact. Religious believers are on average happier, healthier, and more fulfilled than those without spiritual commitment or connection. And so obviously we don't have faith because of scientific studies like this, right? Our faith is more robust and more nuanced than that. But I think it's really good news that the evidence increasingly is showing that religion works, that faith works. In fact, recently LDS Living just published an article that said, it was actually based on a study done by Justin Dyer, someone at BYU, and he found that teenagers who go to the temple actually have a better mental health, better psychological health.
Whoa.
And so increasingly, we see that a life of faith actually does lead to more purpose, meaning, and joy.
Well, wouldn't it? Right?
Of course, yeah.
Because God's interested in the soul, right? The whole, your mind, your body, your spirit,
Right.
I mean, we hear that generally speaking about, love God with all your heart, might, mind, and strength, all the faculties. Right. It just feels like that love and devotion to God with all your faculties would have an impact.
Yeah.
On all your, right?
Absolutely.
I mean,
And I just think that's one of the best evidences is that when you actually try it out, you see like, oh, this really does work. This really does work, right?
Was this the talk? It might be another one because y'all, we kind of prepare a few at a time for when we come in to record, but I don't think it's in here. But one of them, it might be this one where just somebody talks. Oh, it's that line. I just saw it on my paper. It says, as a missionary, I taught Heavenly Father's promises us power in our prayers, but sometimes I forget that for myself. I don't know what made me think of that paragraph now. In the search for it, I lost why I even brought that up.
We were talking about how the gospel actually works.
Oh, that's it. That's it. Practice, right? Yeah. Where he just says, like, I told people, here's, I don't know if this is the right word, the benefits of a life of faith, but it really does work. And you've taught this before on here. I think about this all the time because I think you originally taught me this concept of that. The greatest evidence for the truthfulness of something is, does it work?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like if you live it out, does it genuinely have an impact on the way that you think and feel and respond to things? And that's something I thought of with that. But I have a question for you.
Oh, okay.
I wrote this to ask you. This on the spot. So you can just say, pause. I'll come back another time or something like that. But he gave this line, holiness to the Lord says yes to the sacred and reverent. Yes to becoming our freest, happiest, most authentic, best selves when we follow him in faith.
Yeah.
Do you want to say anything about that idea of you become your freest self and your most authentic? Because that seems contradictory. I thought to myself, I know Stephan is going to tell me why. Were you going to pick that line?
What seems contradictory? I wasn't. I love that line. But
okay. Well, it feels like it would be contradictory to say, as I follow someone else, as I bind myself to someone else, I become a more free version of myself.
Right, yeah. It depends on how you define the word freedom. I remember my dissertation advisor, he was not a fan of this word.
The word freedom?
Yes, and just because it's a really hard word to define and it's used a lot of different ways.
Huh, okay.
So if freedom means I grow in my capacity to do things, then it's clear how the gospel would do that, right? The more
yeah.
And so if free means free from restraint, there's obviously some truth to that. I'm free from the restraint of sin and addiction and a sense of meaninglessness, right? But I remember Tim Keller.
Whoa, that's actually super cool. Don't forget what you were saying, Tim Keller. I'm free from meaninglessness.
Yeah, right, yeah. And so
that's cool.
I remember Tim Keller talking about essentially all of reality has restraints on it. And so we just have to pick the right restraints that will lead to the most possible freedom, if freedom means capacity to do more and more.
Which that definition I was going to have you say again because I really dig it.
Right now. Yeah. And so that's
capacity to do more.
Right. And if I remember, my dissertation advisor was like, I think a lot of times people just mean power when they use the word freedom. But I don't know. It depends on the person and the context, right?
Yeah.
And so, for example, I mean, this is classic, but if I pick the restraint of taking care of my body by eating healthy and exercising, I gain greater capacity.
Okay.
Right? And so what the gospel does is picks the right restraints. Now, here's the thing. Let's just be real and honest about this. Often people think that gospel standards and principles and commandments just seem arbitrary. So as a personal study, I would pick things, this is a recommendation. If you're like, I don't know why we live that, the word of wisdom or celebrating Sabbath or whatever it is, and then ask yourself, why does that lead to greater spiritual, emotional, even temporal, physical capacity in the long run, right? And that might increase our motivation, particularly if we see how the commandment gives us the capacity to love more. Love God and love others more as well.
Yeah.
And so otherwise we're like, oh, why can't I do that? Why can't I, break the word of wisdom in small ways sometimes? What's the big deal? Well, study that. Think about that. Learn about that.
Yeah.
And God will teach you.
Yeah. Well, and live it out, like we said earlier, which is, and then you actually answered one of the things I was thinking of, and then we can just walk away from this.
I want to say something about authenticity too.
Well, I was just going to say, my mind started to go like, okay, what capacities does it increase? Which I think would be a cool thing to just let kind of mull over in your mind to say, oh, what is it about the gospel of Jesus Christ? What capacities does that increase.
Yeah.
Like the principles of sacrifice. What's that increase in me? The principle of obedience. What does that increase in me? The principle of loyalty. What does that increase in me? That would be cool to think about. Okay, now say what you want to say about authenticity,
So
because that was a secondary question, and you might as well.
Well, and the short of it is that if we're built to love, then the most authentic thing we can do is love God and love others. That's it. And I am absolutely convinced, just academically speaking, that we will always feel a little off as humans unless we live a life of love of God and love of other people. We'll cook up excuses why we can't fully give ourselves to God and to other people, and we'll justify, right?
But you'll know you're justifying it.
Right. If you stop and are authentic honest with yourself. So when we say we give our lives to a being, that doesn't mean we are become puppets who are mindless. We have personality, individuality within a realm of acceptableness that is to God. And there might be moments where he says, take this job, go to this person's house. There are moments where he directly leads us, right?
Right.
But it's not a, we wouldn't, in our theology, have this great battle in the premortal life over agency just so that we can be mindless robots. That doesn't seem to be the plan, right?
Yeah. And you said, and I know you didn't mean this entirely, but when you said academically, this makes so much sense to me. I don't know what word I would use, but I was this movie the other day, the Greatest Christmas Pageant Ever. Do you know that book? It's like apparently a really famous book, and Jenny knew what it was. I guess it's this old Christmas book.
Did Dallas Jenkins direct it?
Yeah, he directed it. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's his new Christmas movie or whatever. I just saw it yesterday or day before.
Was it good?
Really good. Really just a darling movie.
That's good.
But in the movie, like I sat there thinking, and something that happens in the movie is just like a reaching out to these like, hooligan children, these hood rats, who, the church like doesn't want to be. And then there's like a line from, the lady in there. She's like, if we don't include them, we miss the whole purpose of the Christmas story, which is, you can see that in the trailer, everyone. I didn't ruin the whole film. But I just remember the way one of the characters like embraces these, outsiders into the church. And they take care of them spiritually, physically. I just remember I sat there in the movie and I just thought, that really is like what we're made for, to take care of each other. Like in the core part of my soul, I was like, that's the life I want to live.
Yeah.
That's how I want to spend my time. And it's how I want to spend my money and my talents and my efforts, is in the pursuit of loving other people. And I just, I don't know what you call that. It wasn't academic. It just was a sense in me. I was so drawn to it, to say, to think and say, I want to live my life like that. And I want my kids to understand a life that looks like that is an abundant life. It's authentic, if you want to call it that. Yeah. It's free. It's thrilling. That's my favorite word, everyone. It's fine. But it just is. I can't think of a better word. But
it's so funny that you went to your kids with thinking about that. And I thought about that too as you're saying that. And sometimes we sort of expect less out of young people. And if I remember correctly, I thought I saw in a seminary teaching training video, President Irene once say, as the world gets worse, we can expect more from our young people, not less. And teach them to say, hey, you're not here for yourself. And by the way, that won't work. That will, in the end, what will work is a life of love of God, love of others,
I am really concerned right now. I was trying to listen to what you were saying, but I was just thrown off my tracks by like you talking about another group of people being young people. Like, why are we not young people still? Like, you just said young people as if it were another category. And
Dave, I'm so sorry to inform you.
We're the new 30, Stephan. This is the new 30.
I've got some news for you.
Okay.
We no longer.
It's bad news. This is a good news podcast. All right. I'm not counting my question as one of mine.
Can I say something? What? I know for a fact you're happier now than you were when you were younger.
Well, sure.
Is that safe to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sad to be what I am. I wasn't ready to give up. I like young. I like it.
Sorry to be dramatic there.
Yeah, that was dramatic, but we're happy. All right. My number 3 is just going to be little since I asked that long question. This line, he says, 9 sacred words on our temples, invite and proclaim. The words are holiness to the Lord, the house of the Lord. You can count them. I did, just to be sure. And there's editors for these talks, no doubt.
And Elder Gong went to Oxford. I think he could handle
handle the 9, the 9 letters or whatever. But I really liked that combo of words together. That there's an invitation on the front and a proclamation on the front. The invitation is, this is the house of the Lord. I'm so happy it's called a house.
Right.
I feel invited into a house. Someone ought to put a welcome mat outside the temple, but maybe it's just on the granite instead of on the ground,
This is why you'll never be in charge of the church, Dave.
What? The welcome mat is elevated and it's engraved on the top.
That's awesome.
So it just doesn't, that's it. That's the welcome mat. This is the house of the Lord. There's an invitation to come be a part of it, but there's also a proclamation, and I think there's just this, like, as we were just kind of talking about, where it's like all are invited, but holiness to live holy is also an invitation that's on there. This is a house. It's a house of holiness. So you're invited into living a different kind of life. Holiness means a life set apart to a sacred cause. I like that invitation. Everyone be a part of this. Also, you can be a part of holiness also.
Yeah.
I like that anyone who passes by there's a proclamation there and an invitation.
Yeah. And if we rebrand what holiness is, that which is sacred, but not that sacred doesn't mean stuffy or self-righteous. It means that which draws out of us reverence and love and a respect for goodness.
Yeah,
the divine. We want that. That's what we want our lives to be infused with. In fact, that ties into my number 2. Are you ready? How was that for
good segue?
Okay. Holiness invites us to infuse daily living with the sacred, to rejoice in daily bread amidst the world's thistles and thorns. So I have a question for you, Dave.
Yeah.
Okay, but before I ask that, I actually would love it if people on YouTube would write their responses to this question as well, because it's just something that I think is just really powerful and beautiful to think about. Okay, ready for this question?
Yeah. Or I was just caught up on the fact that we started posting the full episode on our Instagram page too. So you can do it there if it's easier. P.S. I don't know.
Whatever.
Okay, but go. What were you going to say?
I would sincerely love to hear everyone's thoughts on this. Will you tell me something that some people might think is mundane but has become sacred to you? Either a sacred space or a sacred practice, because he says that we infuse daily living with the sacred.
Okay, this is actually my number 2 also. So I might as well just point that out before,
Sounds good.
Because I was so drawn to that idea of a sacred purpose in everyday life.
Yeah.
So often we think about, religion, we think about faith, we think about these things as like, I'm preparing myself for a future event, which in part we are.
Right.
But a looking forward to an anticipation for, I'm getting myself ready for heaven, for the second coming, to approach the golden gates, or what do they call pearly? I don't know why are they pearly? It's kind of fun. Whatever. But it's just like, I love that it's like, no, hold on, live the abundant life now.
Right.
Live the holiness and the glory of heaven right now. The first thing I think of, and it might be too churchy or whatever for what you're asking, but I thought of just now we have another space, but in the house we moved from, we always gathered just at the top of the stairs for our family prayers, and I genuinely, like, I can't even talk about it without just having the sense of that spot is so holy to me. It was so sacred. It was when we moved from that house, I went and said goodbye to every room in the house, which I don't advise anyone to do because you'll be a blubbering fool by the end. But it was interesting to recognize and see those normal places that have become so holy and so sacred because of what happened there, the lessons that we learned, the time that we shared, the connections that we made. And for me, again, I think you would say, well, of course you would call prayer sacred, but I don't know, that gathering together for prayers that 90% of the time were like quick and
Right.
and like
90. We're at like 98, man.
Oh, we've upgraded. But anyways,
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Can I share mine in real quick?
Yeah, I'm assuming that's why you asked me in the first place, because you wanted. I'm just kidding.
I actually thought of it as you were talking. For me, is reading to my kids has become a really sacred and holy activity, and I regret that I haven't done it more. But the times that I've been more consistent at that, it's been really such a powerful and beautiful experience to read just fun little kids books, and sometimes more powerful literature to them. Most of the time just kids books, but
And I just I've said this before. We've both said this before. Just remember, I shared that one story about playing wiffle ball in the backyard that one time.
Yeah.
But that to me, I just sort of say, people, I can't wait for heaven, and then I picture, sitting at the foot of a bunk bed, reading Where the Wild Things Are,
right,
and saying, "What are you waiting for?
Right.
What are you at? What do you think it's gonna be other than this?"
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I actually I've read The Hobbit to our kids,
I almost
and I recorded because
I love it.
I recorded when I read the first paragraph to Andrew.
Oh, really?
And just because I wanted to remember that.
Yeah.
And I recorded it when I read the last part of it to him as well.
That's awesome.
And he's just this little boy listening to it. And I don't think I would have done that without the restoration. The messages I got from teachers in the restoration was, it's God and then family. And so you better emphasize this. You better do this right. And so I'm thankful for the restoration that it taught me to emphasize that.
That's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, we better hurry.
Okay, do your number one.
Wait, did you do your number? Okay.
That was the same. Okay. Remember?
I'm so sorry, but I have to read a Tolkien quote first. Maybe that's why I thought of that.
Wait, before your first one? Is that why you thought? It's really interesting you said that, because when you talked about reading to them, I was like, oh my, it's probably C.S. Lewis or Tolkien. And I said Where the Wild Things.
I love that book too. It's kind of crazy, but
it is.
Okay, this is a setup for Elder Gong's quote. Okay. So this is a letter from Tolkien to his son Michael. And this is what he says. Still, let us both take heart of hope and of faith. The link between father and son is not only of the perishable flesh. It must have something of eternity about it. There is a place called heaven, where the good here unfinished is completed, and where the stories unwritten and the hopes unfulfilled are continued. We may laugh together yet. That's I'm not even going to say anything. Just so powerful, so
I was
good.
just saying, there's no line like that.
Okay, can I read you?
Rumpus and the wild.
Oh, this is from, that's my setup for Elder Gong, and then I'll be done. This is actually one of the footnotes that he has.
Oh, cool.
And he talks about when his mother passed away. And I'm so glad Elder Gong gave us this little few sentences here. A paradox of parenting is that children are deeply shaped by how they are nurtured. Yet they usually remember little of the early years when their mothers tirelessly, selflessly mother. Words are insufficient to express the truism that my understanding, love, and appreciation for my father and mother expanded and deepened as I became a husband, parent, and grandparent. Reflecting the generational nature of the plan of happiness, we can, in temple mirrors of eternity, see ourselves as mother, grandmother, great-grandmother in one direction, and as a daughter, granddaughter, and great-granddaughter in the other direction. I'll just say this. One of the deepest sources of holiness in my life is relationship and family. And not just between me and my kids or me and my spouse, but also intergenerational family.
Yeah.
And there is something eternal about the longing in our hearts to feel connected to the eternities, to the eternal nature of family.
That's so cool. And I'll just end on my number one, which is similar. Well, you'll see a similarity. You didn't even, what do you say? expound on
Yeah.
this, but he just said this about living a life of faith. He said, you live these, but I almost said, oh, and here are the things you get to live as a person of faith. And he says, communion, community, compassion, commitment, covenant. And he says, all centered on Christ. Every single one of those means so much to me, and it's such good news to me.
Yeah.
That I've been set free by Jesus to live in that kind of holy communion and community and compassion and commitment and covenant. Like, I'm just like, there's so many different ways to live your life. And I feel a deep sense of gratitude that somebody taught me the richest way to live my life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. There was only one holy being, and he came into this world broken and fallen. And all who connect with him, that holiness begins to spill out into every aspect of our lives.
Yeah. Amen. All right, y'all. That's the good news. I feel revived.
Too.
You feel me? All right. See you next week.